Hello, good morning, everyone. Hello, students. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Sanyam, good morning. So, are you getting any problem in the online classes? Hello. COVID has occupied most of our attention in the hospital, in the community. So, you might be hearing news about different stories which are circulating, and also the media news. Uh, Jagriti, are you there? Jagriti, Ashish Arya, Ankita Charan. Okay, so good. The people have opted for the online mode in most of the situation nowadays for the teaching. But as you know, you are going to be the medical professionals. Medical professional have a great responsibility in not only for the appropriate care and the diagnosis and the management, but also allaying the fear of the people and like decreasing the anxiety among the people. There is a lot of panic these days in the air about the oxygen therapy. And as a medical student, I would like to know how much you know about oxygen. You can write your answer in the chat box. That is, what are the side effects of the oxygen? Yesterday, there was an interview for the JRs, and most of the people were not able to reply to this question. So Jagriti is saying toxicity can cause central respiratory depression. Okay. So in pediatrics, what is happening is we are seeing a lot of toxicity of the uh, oxygen because Dr. Jagdish is here. He will have some presentation about the respiratory problems in the COVID-19 in the children. Dr. Bharat is there, how the emergency situation is there and how we can tackle it. Dr. Lokesh Sani is also here. He is a pediatric neurologist. So he can tell about uh, so all of you are saying that it decreases the respiratory drive. Okay. But what we are seeing that there is a permanent changes in lungs can occur because of the oxygen. They are known as dysplasias, pulmonary dysplasia or bronchopulmonary dysplasia. Free radicals can also be there, and free radicals can also cause damage to the different part of the respiratory system. Apart from the whatever you are telling about the respiratory drive may be decreased, yes, they can cause retinopathy in the newborn. That is the most important, and that's why we have to give a very regulated. Even the resuscitation has now been recommended to be done by the room air oxygen only. So the next question is that when the oxygen is there in 21% in the air, how we can concentrate this oxygen? What are oxygen concentrators? Because these are the device which can be used at the home. But again, the at home, we need a proper advice regarding when to use, when to stop, when to increase, when to shift, when to refer. So as a medical student, your responsibility is different from the other students in the country. So I would like to request Dr. Jagdish to start his talk, his small presentation about this is an integrated teaching session. So we have more than one faculty, and their residents are also here in this presentation. And I would like to I would like to request you that you should participate more and more in this session. I am seeing only 50 students among the 2017 batch, when the students are 100 and when they are having an online class. I would also like to tell you that we also have the recordings of these, recording of all the attendance when you are coming and when you are going out. So that also is important. This is a new feature which is there in this Google Meet. So Dr. Jagdish.
Yes, sir. So rather than formal presentation, I will be having interactive kind of class as sir has suggested. So first of all, I would like to ask from student whether COVID-19 is serious in children, yes or no. Kindly type in your chat box. Whether COVID-19 infection is serious in children. Okay, so that's great. Most of you are aware that COVID-19 in children is not serious, as we are seeing a lot of cases in adults or elderly. Now my second question is, why COVID-19 is not serious in children? Kindly answer in chat box. There are several reasons, so you may type one or two reasons which you are aware why COVID-19 is not serious in children. Because you have rightly answered that COVID-19 is not serious in children. So why it is not serious? Okay, so I would like to answer. So basically, there are several proposed mechanisms. Our residents are also there. Immunity, okay. Immunity is stronger, comorbidity is less, very good. Variable expression of H2 receptor, very good. Decrease ACE receptor expression, thymus gland well functioning. Okay, okay. So it's great that most of you are aware that COVID-19 in children is not serious, and means you also know the reason. What is the different what are the different hypotheses behind this? Why COVID-19 is not serious in children? So as you rightly mentioned that there are difference in immunity. So difference in innate as well as adaptive immunity. Okay. So the immunity of children considered to be stronger as compared to adult, and there are more frequent current and recurrent infections in the children. So children tend to deal the infection better as compared to adult. And then there was one answer in the chat box regarding H2 receptor. So they are having basically low affinity as compared to adult, and they are less prone for infection or COVID-19 infection. Then there is difference in microbiota. Then few hypotheses related to melatonin production. So child is having high level of melatonin, so that's why they are having less severe infection. Then comorbidity is also very important, because you see that in elderly or in adult population, they might be having hypertension, diabetes, and other comorbidity, while it might not be case in children. So they are having less severe infection. So these are a few of the hypotheses. Then there are few hypotheses related to vaccination also regarding BCG, MMR. So few of hypotheses has not been proved, but we still believes that children might be having means less serious COVID infection due to all these reasons. Now we come to second point. Second point is, what are the common symptoms of COVID-19 in children? Kindly type in chat box. What are the common symptoms, common clinical presentation of COVID-19 in children? Okay, Jagriti is type fever, good. Cough, fever, running nose, good. Fever, rash, diarrhea, very good. Diarrhea, okay. Abdominal pain, okay. Okay, so most of you have rightly means typed regarding the clinical manifestation. Most of the children present with respiratory symptoms as in adults. We see fever, cough, sore throat. Then few of children may also present with rash, diarrhea, and there might be other system which sometime rarely may be involved. And as we have discussed that most of the children are having mild disease. So there are few criteria that you might be knowing: age appropriate cutoff for the children. So we divide as in our ARI control program for pneumonia, children 0 to 2 months, 2 months to 1 year, and then 1 year to 5 years. So 12 months to 5 years. So my next question is, what is the cutoff respiratory rate for children less than 2 months? Type in chat box. Means above which you will label it as tachypnea. Okay, very good, nice. Okay, so you all are aware that 60, 50, and 40. So less than 2 months, we take respiratory rate more than 60 per minute. 2 months to 12 months, we take respiratory rate more than 50 per month, and 12 months to 5 years, we take respiratory rate more than 40 months at tachypnea. So if child is presenting only with fever, cough, and respiratory rate is less than the cutoff, then child is having mild disease. You are not supposed to worry. You will advise child home isolation, and in home isolation only symptomatic and supportive management is considered. Symptomatic supportive management means if child is having fever, you will provide the medication for fever. If child is having cough, then sometime we tend to provide cetirizine, or sometime means usually the cough syrups are not recommended, then you will advise hot liquid kind of things. So these are the all symptomatic treatment which you are supposed to provide in case of mild disease. Then comes the moderate disease. As we were discussing regarding the respiratory rate, if child is having tachypnea and the oxygen saturation is also less, then child is requiring hospital admission. Okay, so usually we take cutoff of 94 in COVID. You all might be aware that it's very important the oxygen saturation even if patient is at home. So there are digital pulse oximeter. So it's sometimes by which you can monitor saturation in the field. Then comes the moderate disease. Moderate disease, if child is having tachypnea and child require hospital admission. So in such case, you will admit the child, and if require, you will provide the oxygen support to the child. Again, treatment is only symptomatic and supportive. No drug is recommended, means like remdesivir or any other drug in children up to moderate disease. We usually don't provide any drug for children. Okay, but yes, if child is having severe disease, then definitely child will require hospital admission, and we will give child in case-to-case basis, steroid is yes, steroid is recommended. You can give dexamethasone, okay, to children, and in severe cases, suppose child is responding within 72 hours. So this we have included in our guideline also by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, that if child is presented within 72 hours of the severe illness, then in case-to-case basis, we can give remdesivir also to the children. So this is in nutshell about the pediatric COVID management. So the important points is most of the children are having mild disease. Only rarely child require hospital admission. There are limited use of drug, even when steroid and remdesivir are given only in severe cases. And more, even in this wave, second wave, we don't see children are requiring ICU or hospital admission. Children are behaving well even in the second wave also. So hopefully, once we will having more cases, then we might be able to know more about what is the pattern which children are following. But till now, looking at our data, we can confidently say that children are having mild disease only. Then there is one illness which might be beyond the scope of undergraduate, multi-system inflammatory disease in children, which sometimes occur in patient of COVID-19. So there are some diagnostic criteria. If child is having fever for more than 3 days and is having two of these, like child is having rash or bilateral non-purulent conjunctivitis, which we see in Kawasaki disease, or if there is hypotension or shock, or if there is features of myocardial dysfunction, if there is evidence of coagulopathy or acute gastrointestinal problem, if and there is elevated marker of inflammation and no other obvious microbiological cause, means you included all tropical infections and there is evidence of COVID-19 antigen, serology, or likely contact with patient with COVID-19. So this is multi-system inflammatory disease, MSIC, which we rarely see. It is fatal illness and child require ICU admission. We had few children in last wave, but in this wave still we are not having much children of MSIC. Later on we might get few children with multi-system inflammatory syndrome also. So I hope with this, means this is about the nutshell of pediatric COVID. So pediatric COVID is mild till now, and hope that in future also we might not get serious pediatric COVID infection and child might get protected. Thank you. If you are having any question, you can type in chat box.
Dr. Jagdish,
Yes,
what
sir.
clinical feature of MISC?
Yes, sir. I have explained that child is having fever for more than 3 days, along with two of this, like child is having rash or bilateral purulent conjunctivitis, which we also see in Kawasaki disease. Child may come in emergency in shock, hypotension or shock. There may be features of myocardial dysfunction. There is evidence of coagulopathy. You may find PT and APTT raised.
So myocardial dysfunction, how it will
Yes, sir.
manifest in the children?
Myocardial dysfunction means child is having tachypnea, tachycardia, liver is enlarged. So there are features of congestive cardiac failure. And if you do ECG, you will find STT changes. And in echo, the ejection fraction is decreased.
Can they have the myocardial infarction also?
Sorry, sir?
Myocardial infarction.
Myocardial infarction as such, sir, MI, we cannot say that child is having myocardial infarction. We can say that child are having myocardial dysfunction rather than myocardial infarction.
Okay.
Like we see patient in myocarditis. So like myocarditis like picture we can see.
Okay. And the skin lesion, what are the type of the skin lesion?
Skin lesion is usually, sir, maculopapular rash is there, which is more prominent. And most of the skin lesions similar to Kawasaki disease, which we used to see in Kawasaki disease.
Okay.
Yes.
Are these patients more like children who are affected with the COVID? they have a more viral load in their coughing.
Children, sir, regarding children.
When they're coughing, that they have a more virus in their breath or aerosol.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any whether it might be child or adult, if he is coughing, so definitely there are more chances of getting, means others are getting more chances of infected.
So, are the children comfortable wearing the face mask?
Sir, there are studies which showed that beyond 2 years, children are comfortable, but less than 2 years, it's really very difficult. Children might not be able to wear the mask. They are less than 2 years.
Is there any method that we can like make them aware about wearing the mask, appropriate wearing the mask? Because they are touching the face mask on the front and they are
Yes, sir. Yes,
under the nose or under the chin.
yes, sir.
So how
So,
we can?
sir, training means we can give training, and then teachers might play a role in this, because sometimes students tend to listen. I mean, smaller kids tend to listen teachers more than parents and doctors. So sometimes means school teacher may play an important role in this.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir. Students, any questions, sir? They can also ask in chat box. I will try to answer.
We have a lot of other questions also because this is also important. As a medical student, many of the parents may be asking, the relatives may be asking, कि there is somebody in the family. Suppose a adult is affected, both the mother and father are affected with the COVID, and the children are only 2 or 3 years old.
Yes,
So,
sir.
what precaution to be taken in that situation?
Yeah, yes. So one question is from Mayank. Any breastfeeding guideline in COVID positive mother or child? Yes, this is really very good question, and I appreciate, Mayank, that as an MBBS student you asked this question. So basically nowadays, means guideline regarding COVID is, suppose if mother is COVID positive, so she can wear the mask and she can breastfeed her child. Okay, so there is no contraindication of breastfeeding.
So, even if they become positive, these newborn become positive, do they have the symptoms?
Sir, newborn sometime means we see newborn might not be having symptoms. Okay, and they might be asymptomatic positive. So in newborn means the classical symptom might not be there.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
So students can ask their question in the chat box. They can keep on asking the questions because there are a lot of things your friends and relatives will be asking from you. That you are a doctor, so you can advise about these things. So we have Dr. Lokesh Sani also with us and Dr. Bharat Chaudhary. Dr. Bharat, another question has been asked by Mayank is, sir, in the COVID positive child and newborn, what about the vaccination? So it is a general recommendation that whenever there is a COVID positivity, we should wait for the recovery, and the child should be protected as far as possible, because the vaccination, routine vaccination, can be delayed, slightly delayed. So 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks has been recommended after recovery from the COVID positivity. Then the child can be given a vaccination.
Yes, sir, I'm here only. Still, I'm not able to unmute myself.
Acha, okay. So Dr. Bharat, would you like to have some talk
Sure, sir.
about the emergency?
So just to add on, sir, the few questions you asked regarding myocardial involvement. So there will be like Kawasaki, there is coronary involvement is common in such children. So there will be coronary dilatation, and then the chance of infarction could be there. And usually these children who have we divide into with a cardiac shock are just plain MIC or some trace like Kawasaki presentation. So these children predominantly cardiac involvement, they may present with cardiac shock also. And like neonate, today also we had one child in emergency whose mother was positive, and child is now having running fever for past 3 days, and his inflammatory markers are positive. So we have shifted child to NICU, COVID NICU just now. So we have to look for whether this child, how he behaves. And there are a few case reports of neutral MICs also there. So there are very less chances of getting complication in a neutral age group, as sir has mentioned, Jagdish sir has mentioned.
Okay.
So as far as
less,
yes, sir.
less common in the children.
So regarding the management of children with COVID in emergencies, so I just ask all of you. So what are the challenges do you think we may face while managing a children with COVID in emergency? Can anybody answer? What are the issues do you think we may come across during such children? Anybody? So are you able to get my question? So suppose you are questioning emergencies. So
Yeah, answer is coming. Answer are coming.
okay.
Rajat, isolation of the child is difficult.
Yes.
Ankit is saying intubation may be problematic. Anamika is saying small airways, difficult intubation. And Kuldeep Soni is saying compliance, less obvious symptoms and isolation. Maybe
Yes. So many of you have come out with good answers. So yes, isolation of child is difficult. So in emergency is open for all. So major issues have whether we have to identify first whether a patient is COVID or not. Okay, because emergency, the non-COVID patient also coming there, and the patient who are underlying COVID also coming there. So it's difficult to differentiate. So triage is very important in such children. Okay, so in COVID era, so there are different triage has been developed for in different institutes. We also have a two-level triage, so level 1, level 2. So all patients who are coming to emergency, we have to screen them for suspected signs of COVID. Then only we'll allow them to enter into common emergency. So if somehow we miss some children, then there is a risk for the healthcare workers, doctors, and the other patients who are being managed there. So this is one of the challenges. So because in children symptoms are not obvious, there are parents who are accompanying the patients. So if child may not have symptoms, but parents might have symptoms, so to screen both children and parents who are accompanying the patient. So the triage is very, very important. So initially in the last season, in the previous first wave, so we had a clear-cut guidelines and symptoms were typical. There was history of contact. We used to ask there was stable history from abroad or some special areas.
Dr. Bharat, I would like to interrupt you that
Yes.
this word we are often using triage.
Yes, sir.
So what is meant by triage?
So last week only I took class for the student of critical care. So I described them triage. So can any student can tell me? So sir is asking question what is triage. So in last class we had discussed about triage also. So anybody want to make comment about triage? Then I'll explain. Yes, segregation. It is basic sorting out the patient based on severity, and in such changes like infectious disease, you have to rule out by clinical feature. So we're going to segregating a patient based on their either severity or particular condition we are looking for. Okay.
Okay,
So
my question is that what is pre-hospital triage?
any student want to give answer, then I'll answer them.
What is pre-hospital triage? That we are talking about in the emergency triage. But what is a pre-hospital triage?
Yes, at the site of accident. Okay. By paramedics, ambulance people from triage. Okay. So pre-hospital triage could be of two, like if suppose you have some mass accidents, okay. So at that time you have some jump start and start protocols. We have to sort out the patients to whom you have to save life first. And somehow in other patient like who are being brought to the hospital, then if paramedics are informing you about the case, then you can direct him from there also, okay, what kind of patient category is there. And accordingly you can sort out from there. So at the site as well as while patient is coming to the hospital, then we can try the patient.
My question is that when we talk about the COVID-19, so
Yes.
what is the pre-hospital triage for the COVID-19 patient?
Sir, it's a very important question. Like we have so many patients now, days who are being symptomatic and suspects of COVID. So suppose if all the patients are coming to hospital, then definitely burden of the patient coming to hospital will increase. So the telemedicine part is very is given support and it, been developed by the government of India as well as various hospital, and our AIMS also is taken initiative to start telemedicine. So the patient before coming to the hospital, they can call us, they can tell us symptoms, so we can very well tell them about whether they need to come to hospital or not, so that we can segregate our resources and we can utilize properly. And most of the patients who don't require hospital admission or not require any directly contact with healthcare workers can be instructed on telephone. So telemedicine, by telemedicine we can definitely segregate and we can give instruction and we can tell them, okay, no need to worry, and you can keep hospital home isolation, and we can prescribe treatment them. So we can do, so pre-hospital triage is very, very important in this scenario also.
Because most of these patients having a fever or something, they may be they may be attempting to come to the hospital in the OP or the emergency area. So in AIMS Delhi also and AIMS Jodhpur also, we have tried this system that medical students have been made the volunteers. What is meant by the volunteers is that you are not fully knowledgeable, you are not expert, but you can listen to them and you can escalate the problem to the senior people, interns or the JR, and you can advise them what to do. So AIMS Delhi people, they have a helpline number where the volunteers are the medical students. They are sitting in their hostel and they are advising the patients. They are taking their complaint, they are advising, and they can connect to the senior person so that the proper care at the appropriate time can be reached. And that's why this topic is important. And I'm interrupting Dr. Bharat because as a medical student, you have a very wide role. And when we are talking online, you know that the classroom has become now whole world. The classroom is shrunken to like a laptop only. And with the help of WhatsApp, Twitter, social media account, we can spread the message and awareness to a lot of people in this scenario. But the only thing is that as a medical student, you are a more appropriate knowledge rather than the layman person. So you can give the right information to the people. So I think this topic will have some more questions on that at the end. But Dr. Bharat, you can continue.
So we were discussing about the challenges in emergency. So we are discussing about triage, level 1, level 2 triage. So all patients who are coming, we have given a diagnostic criteria or clinical question to the screening health worker. We are sitting at a screen desk. So they will be asking all questions and they're suspecting. Then before allowing them to main emergency, they will contact the medical officers and pediatrician who are sitting inside. There's a complaint whether we should allow this patient inside or not, or how we can manage the patient outside. So based on symptoms, if patient is not sick or sick, so sick suspect patient will be taken to the MICU upstairs, and then will be investigated, and then depends on the positive or negative, then will be re-triaged there. And if patient is stable enough, we are going to discharge from the triage only because allowing inside will be more infectious to others. And if there is no history of suspicion of any COVID, then we'll allow patient to come inside. So my second question is there. So will asymptomatic child can have COVID? So I'm trying to ask whether will you suspect COVID in a asymptomatic child or not? So this is one of the most challenges we are facing nowadays because children, they don't have any symptoms, but they'll be carrying the virus, and our residents, our healthcare workers are at more risk of getting infections. And recently we in our department also, many residents got positive from their relatives, even they don't have any symptoms. 2 days back, we just had a child with head trauma. He fell down from tree and we resuscitated him and we managed. We never spread COVID in that child. But as a part of the routine protocol, we did RT-PCR, he came to positive. So we have to consider each and every child now as a COVID positive, and we have to take all precautions. So being a healthcare worker, to prevent ourselves and to other staff, most important. So in this pandemic, any child without any symptoms also, because children may be just a carrier, or they may be acting as super spreader maybe.
I think Dr. Bharat, this is a very important message you have given, that any person is COVID positive nowadays in a situation like pandemic, unless proved otherwise. So I think this message not only apply to the children in the home, is also applied to the hostel and the students also, because most of the time what we are getting that students who are eating together, they are spreading the infection to other. They don't have any symptoms, and when they just sit together for a long time in the like mess or the in the canteen, they spread the message. This spread the infection. So that's why, as a medical student, it is your responsibility to protect yourself and also guide the juniors also to get them protected. I have seen the first year student, they are going hanging with each other together, like in vegetable shop, they are just together and they are so close that there is no physical distancing at all. So this is a true uh, situation for spreading the virus in the hostel or in our community. So I think as a medical student, you should take precaution. You should consider every other person. Even I am there, I may be positive. So you should consider that any person whom you are talking is a COVID positive unless proved otherwise in this situation. Dr. Bharat.
Yes, sir. So my last question will be, so we have discussed about challenges we are facing. So what are the challenges faced by the patients or caregivers in this COVID scenario? Coming to emergency. So as a public health part, if you want to discuss, so we are facing so many challenges. So do you think the parents who are coming with the children at emergency, so are they facing any challenges as well? Yes. Anybody? So yes, definitely. As a healthcare person, also we are also afraid in going to hospitals, especially if there are any milder symptoms. So patients are being at home, many facilities are being closed. There is also lack of transport services, and parents are waiting for some time. Okay, this may be milder illness and maybe get improved. So definitely number of people who are coming to emergency is decreased, but those who are coming are really sick, and many are coming in delayed stage. So we are more receiving complicated cases, and we have to make aware the patients that there is a telemedicine facilities available, so they can utilize those services before coming to hospital, so that we can give them rightly advice whether to come or not. And definitely they are at risk of getting infection from hospital from other patient. So this from the emergency aspect. I'll be happy to answer any question if there. Thank you.
They have asked about question about the psychological issues.
So definitely patients are having psychological distress. The media and the situation is there, which is giving misinformation as well as the real situation is there. So definitely we are not healthy as far psychological think we have to think about. So everybody in distress at present, if you think psychologically.
Okay, Dr. Bharat, there are many more questions will be coming, but let us move to Dr. Lokesh Saini. So he has recently joined as a assistant professor in pediatrics department as a neurologist.
So good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. So continuing with the topic, so we have learned that COVID-19 in children is mostly asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. But we also know that children do present with severe illnesses like severe pneumonia or severe multi-organ system dysfunction sometimes, and para-infectious complications like MISC, which Dr. Jagdish sir has highlighted. So to begin with, one should understand that neurological complication in a child can be due to two mechanisms. So one is direct due to virus, and second is post-infectious complications, like which can happen in any kind of viral infections. So can anyone tell or write down in the chat box what are the common presentation till now you have seen, or any child with COVID with neurological presentation you have seen or you have heard? Anyone? So stroke. So right. So vascular complications can be there. So 2 days back, I was in the ward for a child, there was a child with febrile seizures. So I was seeing that child, the child was irritable, and parents, I have asked that any URI symptoms are there or not. So parents are not coming with this history, but I saw the mother coughing in between, and there was a rash which the child has had. It was looking like an insect bite rash, but still we thought it could be COVID. And nowadays, because of policy, every child is being tested for COVID. To our surprise, that child has turned COVID positive. So this is the lesson what we are hearing from last 40-45 minutes, that until proven otherwise, any presentation or any neurological presentation also in today's pandemic, we should think of COVID, or we should be testing COVID, because those children can be carriers and spreading infections to healthcare workers also, and to the family members also, and increasing the burden. So one thing we should understand, that like whatever this complications has been mentioned, stroke, encephalitis by Dr. Harshita, Dashan has mentioned Bell's palsy. So these complications are mostly due to direct viremia phase and acute phase. So these complications can be due to virus itself, vasculitis, stroke, then encephalitis, Bell's palsy, seizures because of invasion of virus. What commonly we see in neurological complication is para-immune complication or para-infectious complications. What does that mean? That the child had COVID, because the children are mostly asymptomatic. That time nobody will know that they had COVID, and after 3 to 4 weeks they present with acute onset optic neuritis, transverse myelitis, Guillain-Barré syndrome. There are many cases reported from India in hundreds of, from one hospital. 100 cases has been reported from Bombay hospital, one of the Bombay hospital, KEM. So lot of GBS, transverse myelitis, optic neuritis, even NMDR encephalitis post-COVID. So all sort of para-infectious complication can occur due to COVID. So direct as well as indirect complications are there. So I have a short presentation for you, which I will be sharing, and I will rush through it. Is my screen visible?
No, Lokesh, please use present now and select the presentation.
Wait, sir.
Or you can choose the full screen also.
Okay, sir. Is it visible?
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Visible.
Okay. So to begin with, so not only COVID-19, all kind of coronaviruses, like MERS coronaviruses or SARS coronaviruses, can have effect on CNS, because as Dr. Jagdish sir has highlighted, that ACE receptors are less in children, but they are still there, and they are less common in brain as compared to other parts of the body. So there are chances, but less chances of direct invasion of CNS. So mechanism is same, that they invade through ACE receptors and they can cause direct neurotropic effects. But usually they viruses climb through the peripheral nerve terminals. So they infect peripheral nerve terminals, most commonly olfactory nerve. That is why some of the even adults and children, you must have heard the loss of smell and taste. That is why those patients, whoever get less, loss of smell and taste early in the disease, there are less chances of pulmonary complication in them. They can have neurological complications, but they are less likely to have pulmonary complications, because most of the viruses go to CNS in them, and they usually have early headaches or prolonged headaches even after COVID settles in them. So these are the early papers from China when the COVID started in 2020. So they have reported up to 78 out of their almost 300, 400 patients, that 36% of their patients had neurological manifestations. But there is a catch there, that they have included impaired consciousness, skeletal muscle injury, even headache in neurological symptoms. So I will not say that this is neurological complications are as prevalent as 36%, but definitely 10 to 15% of the patients does have neurological primary neurological complaints, and in adults this is more common, and in children this is less common for obvious reasons. So what happen in how does it infect central nervous system? So there are direct invasion. There is reports of direct invasion. They go to nose. Not from nose, they infect olfactory nerve terminals, and through olfactory nerve terminals they ascends to brain, and then infect the brain directly if there is a predilection. So certain points which one should remember, that neuroinvasive propensity of COVID has been documented almost for all the beta coronaviruses, including SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. Infection of SARS-CoV or MERS-CoV was also reported in the CNS, where the expression of level of ACE230. So for undergraduates, remember the receptor ACE. It is all through ACE receptors, and another one is DDP430. If you want to remember, but at least remember ACE receptor. So another study in China where they have studied retrospectively, however, like 214 consecutive hospital patients with laboratory confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19. And what they have found is neurological symptoms manifest in a notable proportion. So this is the study I was talking about. About 36% of the patients in their cohort had neurological complications, but there was a flaw in their study, that they collected this data retrospectively and they included all the symptoms which can relate to neurology, like headache or myalgias, muscle weakness, muscle injury. All symptoms they have included in neurological. So this is one of the initial paper which was published in JAMA Neurology. After this only there was a search for neurological presentation and neurological complications in COVID-19. So this is the same, this paper finding, which has been elaborated. I'm not going to in details about this. So what was the limitation of this study was small sample size was there. This was a retrospective study, and the effect of this neurological manifestation on their outcome could not be assessed. So it was just association. Most of these neurological manifestations are accompanied by the severe multi-system complications, and not alone. They are not the only presenting complaints. So what one should understand, neurological complications are more common in severe presentation, any kind of severe presentation. Severe pneumonia, there are high chances of neurological complications. So any child which is not presenting with other systemic complications, or just presenting with neurological complications, think of post-COVID complications, para-infectious. And if a child is presenting with multi-system involvement simultaneously with brain involvement, that think about acute COVID-19 viremic complication. So this is the learning point, that if only neurological part is affected, consider para-infectious immune-mediated condition like optic neuritis or autoimmune encephalitis, NMDR encephalitis. So think about post-COVID complication. But the child is also having liver dysfunction, kidney dysfunction, shock, severe pneumonia, and also had encephalopathy, then it is part of viremia, not the post-COVID complication. So we have discussed this, and I have also told you that proposed mode of invasion of CNS is viremia and direct invasion through nerve terminals. And most commonly, it travel through olfactory nerve terminals through nostrils. So this is what happens. So through nose, it can go into lungs also. It can go directly travel in the brain also. So one should remember the pulmonary complications are common, but there are high chances this virus travel in the upper direction also, or can cause. So depends on the viral load, the individual can manifest. So I'm not going to the pathophysiology. I will just discussing the manifestations. So I've just told you that Guillain-Barré syndrome is the most common neurological complication seen with COVID worldwide. Not only in India, worldwide, it was the first complication, post-infectious complication, and the most common complication associated with this virus. So not only with this COVID-19, any viral epidemic occurs, most common neurological complication is usually GBS. So when Zika virus was there in the Brazil, and there was concerns that it will be happening through worldwide. So what is the most common complication associated with Zika virus in children? It is microcephaly. If mothers are infected, so they are born with microcephaly, but in adults they are presented with Guillain-Barré syndrome. So as I told, any kind of complication can occur. So there are reports of COVID-19 associated acute hemorrhagic necrotizing encephalopathy. So this kind of picture you can find in neuroimaging. So all kind of neuroimaging, all kind of presentations, acute presentations can be possible. So what one should remember is any unusual or unexplained neurological syndrome or presenting symptoms in the ongoing pandemic, it is prudent to rule out COVID-19. So with that, if any doubts or we can discuss, any doubts are there.
Lokesh, thank you. Actually, this is very important for the medical student to consider that any unusual presentation in this situation may require a rolling out COVID-19. But at the same time, we should keep on collecting this data because it may be a coincidental finding also. So we have to use our scientific minds, and we have to review the literature world over, any report of similar thing has been done or not. As somebody was saying that the facial palsy also can be a presentation, and we have got a lot of facial palsy patient with the COVID-19.
Yes,
Another
sir.
is being asked by one of the students, Divyansh, is what is NMDA encephalitis?
Okay, so Dr. Divyansh, very good question. It is a kind of an autoimmune encephalitis, which is the most common autoimmune encephalitis in children as well as adults. So it is a NMDAR receptor. Antibodies are formed against NMDAR receptor, which is N-methyl D-aspartate receptor present in the extracellular level of neurons. So what will happen is antibodies will form, and usually it will be formed after any kind of viral infection. So it can form after herpes infection, Japanese encephalitis, or COVID-19 also. So mechanism is same. So there is molecular mimicry after any viral implication. So breach is there, then antibodies are formed, and in the second attack they will develop antibodies, like any other autoimmune condition you must have read. So this is NMDR encephalitis, most common encephalitis in children as well as adults, autoimmune. Any other question from everybody? So I will ask, like, what will be the treatment? Is there any difference in the treatment? So that will be the question you should ask me. So neurological complication is fine if it can happen. Any kind of complication can happen. Is there any difference in management? So answer is there is no difference in management. Management is essentially same. Whatever treatment you give to child with any neurological condition, not due to COVID also, you will be giving the same treatment in these conditions also. There is no difference. No specific treatment per se for COVID-19 associated neurological complication. So you treat them symptomatically. If autoimmune encephalitis, you give immunoglobulins and pulse methylprednisolone. If GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, it is you will give them IVIG and supportive respiratory care. So these are the just essential treatment is essentially same, but why you need to identify them? One can ask why you need to identify them, because those children can be carriers. They can infection. So you need to identify, and also you epidemiologically you need to. Okay, these children had COVID 4 weeks back, where none of them family members was tested. None of the family members knew that they had COVID. So this is very important to find, to record this data, and to understand how uncommon is neurological complication, because when you know the denominator, you can understand the numerator.
I think this is very important that we have to use our literature search and discussion. This is a right time to discuss with as many people as possible. And I think this is a great opportunity to learn so many aspects of the medical science, which which is really going to change the future of medicine and the medical practice. So have you answered this question by Dr. Jagriti, that how much interval is there between the active infection and infectious? Post-infection neurological symptoms.
So interval is Dr. Jagrati, your question is very valid. That what is the approximate interval? So not before 2 weeks. So we rarely see within 2 weeks of infection, but in the window of 2 to 4 weeks, most of the infections present. So they present with in 2 weeks of a viral infection. So this is the answer for your question, first question. And are there any predisposing patient factors? Definitely. So one should understand children or all adults, whoever develop COVID, not all develops immune complication or para-infectious autoimmune complications. So there is definite predisposition, and this predisposition is mostly based on their HLA and their genetic disposition. So if immune, already the child had some other immunological disorders like celiac disease, those children are more prone. So one should understand that there are predisposing factors. Especially we should be fine like studies on this aspect. Very good question, Dr. Jagriti. So I have answered your query. So it is 2 to 4 weeks.
So this is very important that we should keep on asking the question, because in the first instance, in the last wave, we had learned so many things, but again we relaxed our guards, and that's why there is a surge in the cases have happened. And this time the presentation is totally different, although there may be many factors. So we can say, as a medical community, we can say that we still don't know much about the COVID-19. It is only over a period of 2-3 years that many studies will come out where we can definitely say that, okay, this is a relation and this is a correlation. There are many multiple factors, host factors, the vaccination factors, they determine the outcome and the manifestation. For example, what we are observing, although there is a limited data till now, from January the vaccination has started, but it has been seen that those who are infected after 2 doses of vaccination, they have a less severe disease as compared to those who have not been vaccinated. So at least the vaccination is providing some immunity. I hope that all the students of the final year have got their vaccination done. If no, then you should get it done as early as possible. we provide the vaccination free of charge to all the medical students. I hope that everybody has got the vaccination. Okay. So just let us know that who has not got vaccinated and what are the reasons, so that it can be discussed individually. So Divya has asked the question, is there any increased risk for any disease or infection following recovery of the COVID infected patient? Dr. Jagdish.
Sir, what is your question?
So is there any increased risk of for any other disease or infection following recovery of COVID infected patient? Are they exposed to some other disease?
So till now means in children we don't have data regarding this, whether they are with risk for increasing with other infection also. So I think we don't have any data till now. But in adult, yes, if means they are admitted in ICU, they received some drug like tocilizumab, etc., and there is definitely risk of secondary bacterial infection and other infection also. And there are few reports regarding mucormycosis, particularly in adult patients those who are diabetic and COVID-19 infections. But in children, I don't think there are much reports like this. So Dr. Lokesh can also share if he is aware.
So I will want to highlight that post-COVID psychological issues. This is very common, and this is very common in older children and adolescents, not the younger children, because they don't think much. They are stress-free. But in older children and adolescent, post-COVID psychosis, post-COVID depression, post-COVID stress is too much, and it is rampant. In adults also, they keep thinking about that ICU stay, about the disease, about the recurrence, and this is the something which is the next pandemic. People are talking about this next pandemic in the future, that post-COVID psychological complications. So very important.
Yeah, Lokesh is very right. Actually, there are two types of complication in the COVID. One is because of the COVID itself, and the second is because of the drugs and the therapy and the management strategy which we are using. So anxiety is the most important psychological effect during the COVID in the home quarantine, even in the hospital. That is the most important thing. And for the children, there is decreased activity. So these are the because of the management. Secondly, that there are so many drugs, as Dr. Jagdish has told, that everybody is running for tocilizumab to be given to their patient, but they don't understand what are the side effects. They are serious side effects. They decrease the immunity, predisposing to mucormycosis, which is difficult to treat. So many complications can occur, even the remdesivir. So hepatotoxic and other toxicity, kidney toxicity can occur. So because of these, and secondly, because of the COVID itself is causing a lot of changes in our lungs and the respiratory system. That is, they are predisposing to the long requirement for the oxygen, leading to fibrosis and other complications. Hypoxia as such can cause damage to the brain. There's a neuronal injury in a chronic hypoxia, which leads to like poor concentration, poor ability to do things. Even this tremorlessness and other symptoms have been noted in this patient because of simple hypoxemia. So even the hypoxia, as a medical student, you should understand what is the effect or how we can recognize, and what are the innovations to recognize the hypoxemia in a well patient even. Well patients can also go into hypoxemia. So a very titrated amount of oxygen is required at home also. If you give more of the oxygen, they will they develop the gradually bronchopulmonary dysplasia and other changes. Even the lung disease, interstitial lung disease can be developed. So these are the things. One question is asked by Harshita Avasthi, vaccination recommended for children. Although there is no contraindication for vaccination for children, the children can be given vaccination, but since it all depends on the trial data. So that's why the trial data till now is not available. But in US, they are carrying out a trial among the children between 6 years to 18 years. and they have now found out safe for the children, and they are going to open it for everybody. So what now you have learning so much about the vaccination. Now everybody is knowing about the vaccine, the side effect of the vaccine, the development of the vaccine, the various vectors used in the vaccine. So this is an opportunity to learn so many, and it is possible in the next 6 months you have a bouquet of the vaccine, and you have to choose the which vaccine to be given. Even the oral vaccine, banana vaccine will also be there. Nasal vaccine will also be there. Safe vaccine will also be there. So this is a time period. This will lead us to learn about more about the biotechnology processes involved in the various parameters. So it is not only infectious; it is a public health issue. So, and for any vaccination, the dose between two vaccinations should be 4 weeks, at least 3 to 4 weeks. So regarding the COVID vaccination, the pregnant and lactating mother, although it is safe, we can give in the last trimester, but as per the recommendations, because our trial data is limited, we cannot give it to the children up to when they are lactating with the lactating mother. So what is the rationale behind azithromycin, cephalosporins, and ivermectin in COVID? This is,
So this is yes, sir. Sir, I would like to answer
yeah.
this
Okay.
questions. And means you might have seen that few of the doctors are also prescribing this, but there is no evidence of either azithromycin, cephalosporin, or ivermectin patient with COVID-19. So we at AIIMS Jodhpur do not prescribe all these medication. We provide only symptomatic and supportive management in children who are in home isolation and in moderate and severe disease. I have already told you there are only few drugs, particularly which we tend to use only in severe disease.
In fact, this is a time we have to learn that is what is working well, and we have to understand the psychology of the virus, how how the virus is behaving. We have to learn that, and what are our impact on our body. So this is all like they are not useful. So we have at AIIMS Jodhpur we are using the rational therapy. Even we are not giving oxygen even at 90% FiO2. At 90% of the saturation, we are still withholding oxygen, because if we start the oxygenation, it will decrease the drive further. So there are many other things. So that's why rational use of the oxygen at home is also very important. As a medical student, you should go into depth of the oxygen toxicity, oxygen generation, oxygen plant, oxygen transport, oxygen use, when the hospital admission is required, when the patient can be managed at home. You have to learn, and you have to maintain the communication. The communication skill is very important. How to communicate properly, and at the same time be prepared for the any complication which can occur. You should be able to tackle that. Our hospital should be ready. The bed should be ready. How we improve the public health infrastructure? How we can improve the number of healthcare workers in the coming years, coming months? Sir, then if we ask our opinion, should we discourage them from taking the? Actually, there is a psychological reason for behind this, because if you say the patient not to take anything, they will say that doctors are not doing anything. But I think we should discourage. Simple, plenty of water, hydration, normal living style till you are comfortable. Don't do too much of the activities. Don't stress yourself too much. Eat lot of good nutritious food. Vegetables, fruits, they are very important. A rest also important. A good sleep is also important. Yes, pulse oximetry at home. But again, you have to know that the pulse oximeter is limitation. The oximeters give variable readings. Sometimes it goes to 93 and the patient become panicky. And then at other time it goes to 95 or 96. So the higher of these readings should be taken as the true, not the least. If it goes to 93 within a few seconds, the patient start panicking that it is going to 93 or I need a oxygen bed. It is not required.
Sir, one important issue is regarding CT scan, because we are seeing a lot of
Yes,
doctors advising CT scan for even for children also. So should also be discouraged, because as soon as children is having mild disease or even moderate disease, maintaining saturation, so we don't think that CT scan is required, because CT scan is associated with risk of radiation hazards. So around 70 to 100 X-ray with one CT scan only. And there are few reports which are coming that people might not be having COVID-19 infection, and once they go for CT scan, because where a lot of COVID patients are also getting their CT scan done, so they acquire infection, COVID-19 infection from CT scan site also. So this should remember. This should also understand that unnecessary investigation should also not be done, and there should not be panic. If anybody in the family member or any child is having COVID infection, then we should not get panic.
Yeah, I think some of the hospitals are using this strategy that, okay, first do the, if RT-PCR report is not available, do the CT scan, HRCT, and see that what is the score. And based on that, they advise the treatment. This is not a correct approach. It is wasting our time also, and also it is wasting the money and predisposing to a COVID infection also. So this is a very good advice by Dr. Jagdish. Never go for a CT first. You have to see the clinically. Actually, one important thing you have to understand, our body is unique. My body is different, Dr. Jagdish's body is different, Dr. Ishan, Mr. Ishan, yeah, Divyansh's body is different. Everybody has a different way of behaving. And that's why this question is being asked by others. So this answer is in that also. What are the home remedies to increase oxygen saturation? No, oxygen saturation is not required at all. If you are comfortable, because 21% has God has given oxygen, that is sufficient. Whenever you do exercise, you rest and your body become adjusted to that situation. So it is your body which dictate. So that's why we have to learn the body, each and every individual behavior, how their parameters, physiological functions like heart rate, their sensorium, the way of talking, the breathlessness during speech, this should also be taken into account rather than simply depending on the pulse oximeter result. This is very, very wrong and erroneous. So what are the immediate steps to be taken at home if the saturation drops, the patient become panicky? Panicky decrease the oxygen demand. So oxygen saturation further drops. If just a relaxation can be done for the patient, it automatically comes back to the normal. There's nothing to be done. Many procedures have been advised, that is prone nursing, but they have a certain limitation. They cannot be done in a very sick patient. And also if you are having a COVID positivity, your body adjusts to that situation. You can see yourself. If you are comfortable with anything, that is the best. Harshita has advised awake prone ventilation at home. Awake prone ventilation is also done in the ICU. But again, these are we have to adjust and individualize the approach to each and every patient. Each and every patient is different. It cannot be generalized. We cannot say that the prone ventilation or prone nursing will help. But definitely it helps in the recruitment of the alveoli, which are like passive in the back of our near the spinal area. So that may be helpful. But again, we have to recognize that what is their individual body is reacting. And as Dr. Lokesh has said, that hydration, nutrition, and good sleep is the most important. In fact, I will say that the good sleep is very important for the medical student, because when we are using most of the time mobile phone, screen time increase, there is increase in the screen time because there is online classes also, then your activities are affected, you are confined to the hostel room. So the sleep is bound to be affected. And a poor sleep can also give rise to predisposition to the COVID infection also. That's why a proper sleep of 7 to 8 hours is important. And I think this advice to be given to all the family members. And one thing is important, the communication at this time is very, very important. Whatever communication, but don't panic. Don't use the panic button in the WhatsApp or the Twitter. Don't become reactive in any of these aspects, because social media also creating a panic. The media house is also creating the panic that is causing the disturbance in the many aspects of our living. I think this is a time that there's a classroom without the boundary and the wall, and we can learn more during these discussions rather than having the presentations. So there are a lot of questions from the students. I think their students are very much interested in learning. Your opinion also counts, because based on your opinion, we'll decide our future action also. And certain decisions have been taken with a lot of deliberation with the head of departments, with the deans of various academics, as well as research and the examinations. And also the psychological aspect is also being taken care of. While at AIIMS Jodhpur, we decide anything for you. We are also trying to improve our online teaching also. It should not be like just a lecture only, it should be interactive. And also you might be aware that Twitter has a space also, one of the space where 11 people can speak and share their thoughts about. So we can have that use of this technology in this time will quite helpful in spreading the right message in a scientific way. That is the purpose of this integrated teaching. That is, the scientific approach should be adopted rather than thinking illogically or just on the say what is being said by the newspapers or the news medias. They are spreading a lot of wrong message. If you just go to the BBC World, they are so calm and quiet in spreading the right message in a right way. On the other hand, Indian news medias are like shouting in front of the cameras. They are showing so much havoc in our society. The cremation grounds, deep inside the ICUs, they are opening the pictures to the general public. That is creating more of the panic. So now we'll end this session. So I am thankful to Dr. Jagdish, Dr. Lokesh, and Dr. Bharat. And our JR were also there, some of the JRs, and all the medical students of the final year batch, because many things depends on you. If your approach is logical, if your approach is scientific, then we can win this battle. This is a war time. It is not like a normal time. It is a war time. And for a war time, we have to devote our extra mile for the patient welfare. Even if you are asked to do some work in the COVID area, you should agree. You should be a part of the volunteer for the telemedicine. You should come forward. Make yourself safe also. Wear the face mask. Maintain social distancing. Before going out, take all the precautions. Don't touch the surface anywhere. Whenever you touch the surface, wash your hands with the soap and water, or sanitize your hands. So thank you, Lokesh, Jagdish, and Bharat, and all the medical students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.